Hello and welcome to a special episode of Lovin Daily. We have with us Therese Comodini Cachia to commemorate the 3-year anniversary since the assassination of journalist Daphne Caruana Galizia. For those of you who don't know, Therese Comodini Cachia is the parte, civile lawyer for Daphne Caruana Galizia's family members, and she's got quite an in-depth knowledge about the case. So, Dr. Comodini Cachia, to just start with, in the last year, we've seen a lot happen. We saw Lovin arrested, we've seen Prime Minister Joseph Muscat resign, same with Keith Kembry, Conrad Mizzi, Chris Cardona. We've seen changes to the Attorney General, to the Police Commissioner. Do you think progress is finally being made?
I believe that progress on this case can only be made once we understand and fulfill the full truth and also the full, complete justice. But justice and truth can't simply be done and performed in relation to Daphne and her family. Justice and truth also needs to be carried out in relation to Malta as a country, for us as a population. So it is not simply a case of resignations, nor of new appointments, nor is it simply a case of having proceedings initiated in court, but it is also a case where the country needs to have a full investigation in all the allegations of corruption, of money laundering, in all the allegations that journalists and the media have really investigated and have brought to the attention of us as members of the public. I think before we manage to see a whole process of justice and a whole process that brings about the truth about each and every allegation, then we really can't be satisfied that things are being done very well.
So what else do you think needs to be done a bit more specifically? So things like the electrogas deal, vitals, these are things Daphne investigated, and we're still talking about them today. What do you think needs to be done over there?
Clearly, all the deals, vitals, electrogas, the IIP citizenship scheme, all these big projects that Joseph Muscat had and which Robert Abela seems to want to continue to have and to hold on, all these deals need to be fully investigated. They need to be fully investigated, not simply on how they were given, on how they are being run, on how they are being operated, but they have to make sure that the investigation into such contracts will show us that they are clean contracts, that they are clean projects. And by clean, we do not simply mean that they are beneficial to the country, but also that although they are beneficial to the country, there hasn't been anyone who has been made a millionaire or who has been made rich off the back of the public interest. So the public interest does not simply mean reduced rates or benefits to the individual, but the public interest also requires an element, a high and strong element of good governance. And I think all these deals need to be investigated from this aspect.
Okay, so obviously this lends to the idea of the public inquiry. So obviously you fought tooth and nail to get this public inquiry even get going. It's almost the first of its kind. It's relatively new, and we're starting to see, some people questioning it. We even had Lovin lawyers call it a Spanish Inquisition. We've had issues with Prime Minister Robert Abela over the public inquiry. What's new? What new information were we able to obtain from the public inquiry? Why exactly was it needed? Would we have maybe got the information somewhere else?
Okay. The aim of the public inquiry is not related at all to Jürgen Fenech's process at court. The aim of the public inquiry is there to fulfill a public interest, and that public interest is to bring a process of healing to this country, a process which can only be obtained if we do have a public inquiry of this type, which will analyze how the administration has behaved. Has the administration behaved in a manner that created a system of protection for persons who were behaving against the public interest, of persons who were protecting their own interests. Has the administration and people in power, including Joseph Muscat himself, including Keith Kembry, including Conrad Mitzi, including appointees within the police force, have they all behaved in a manner that allowed or gave space or allowed room for this assassination to take place? Have the institutions worked in a way that they should have worked? Was there adequate rule of law protection for the entities, and were all these state entities really and truly fulfilling their role under the Constitution and under our legislation? So the public inquiry is not about Jürgen Fenech's guilt or innocence. The public inquiry is not about the guilt or innocence of the De Giorgios or Mr. Muscat. It is purely aimed at providing this country with a conclusion, with an analysis on what is the truth. What is the truth, not necessarily in relation to guilt or innocence of who has committed or who was involved in the assassination itself. That is up for the criminal courts to determine, but the public inquiry is there to analyze whether, for example, the Prime Minister, his Chief of Staff, his Cabinet, the Commissioner of Police, officers within the police force actually took their job seriously and behaved in a way which protected citizens in Malta, in a way which would have made the assassination less possible, or whether they have actually contributed to create such a situation where the assassination was easy to commit. And I'll give you an example of this. The public inquiry is very interested in verifying whether Daphne, as a journalist, was vilified, whether she was dehumanized. Why? Because when you dehumanize a journalist, you reduce the protection of that journalist. The public inquiry is also interested in verifying whether the police force or any entity in Malta was capable of making an assessment and identify that Daphne was at risk. Why? Because we need to make sure that investigative journalists are protected. We need to make sure that we have sufficient entities who have enough resources and capability to understand whether a person in Malta is at risk of being hurt. The public inquiry is also trying to understand whether there was a sense of impunity, a sense of protection. And we have been seeing each member of cabinet coming up to testify, and each one of them seems to shirk responsibility. Each one of them seems to declare, no, I did not raise questions, or I did raise a few questions, but at the end I pulled the same rope, so I came to the same conclusion. And what all this means is that we have been living in a country where those who are meant to defend our rights have failed to do so. And this is why the public inquiry is so important.
So obviously somebody who's, I guess, been kind of against the public inquiry, or at least been a stumbling block towards it, is Prime Minister Roberta Bella. There was the whole issue of extending the public inquiry or not. Beyond all of that, do you have faith in the current Prime Minister to oversee this process of justice in the case?
The Prime Minister has no role in overseeing justice being done in the public inquiry. To be very honest, the Prime Minister should not even interfere in the public inquiry. He has no right to stop the public inquiry. He has no right whatsoever to deny it more time if it needs more time. It is an independent public inquiry. It is an independent board who do not rely on the Prime Minister. On the contrary, the Prime Minister has obligations under the terms of reference of the public inquiry. The Prime Minister has the obligation to provide the public inquiry with all the relative and necessary information. The Prime Minister has the obligation to make sure that his members of cabinet are saying the truth when they testify under oath before the public inquiry. The Prime Minister has the obligation to provide the board with all the necessary resources that they need, and the Prime Minister, at the end of the day, will have the full obligation of implementing any proposals and any recommendations that the board will make in its final report. And also, he must make sure that what is identified in that report, what will be identified in that report as needing to be changed, he must change it. And if there is political responsibility to be held, then he must take it.
Do you have faith in him, yes or no?
I have faith in civil society, and I am sure that civil society, like myself, will continue to fight for this to take place.
Okay, on to just like the final question. So up until a few months ago, you were saying that the battle for the fight on for what Daphne Caruana Galizia fought for against corruption, a big stumbling block was the then opposition leader, Adrian Dalia. Now that's all changed. I wonder what your outlook is for the opposition moving forward. Do you think it's going to be the counterweight to all the corruption allegations that are happening in this country?
I have continuously fought to have a strong and credible opposition. I think the opposition will continue to strengthen itself, will continue to become stronger. We can become stronger together. Dr. Grech and Dr. Dalia both have different roles, as I do. We will have different roles to play within the group of the opposition, and I believe that the opposition will make a difference. It will, to be honest, it will continue to make a difference because we have always done our part. But we now have a more credible and united front to move forward.
Thank you, Dr. Comodini Cachia, for joining us. That's all from us. Let us know what you thought in the comments below. Tune in next time. Thank you.